Alexander Mitchell stood in his gleaming kitchen, loosening his tie after another 16-hour day at the office. The marble countertops reflected the late afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in golden light. The Manhattan penthouse was immaculate, decorated by an expensive interior designer in shades of gray and white. It was beautiful, impressive, and utterly devoid of warmth. At 38, Alexander had everything he'd worked for. CEO of Mitchell Properties, a Fortune 500 real estate development company he'd built from the ground up. Luxury home, luxury car, respect in every boardroom he entered. Everything except the things that actually mattered. His Harvard Business School diploma hung prominently in his office downtown, alongside photos with politicians and business leaders. His family's portrait was conspicuously absent. The Mitchells of Boston, old money, old values, old prejudices. They'd cut ties when Alexander's roommate had accidentally outed him during his second year at Harvard. His father's words still echoed, "No son of mine will bring that lifestyle into this family." So Alexander had built his own legacy, each achievement a silent rebellion, each success a shield against the pain of rejection. There had been James once, an investor with kind eyes who understood the pressure of hiding. Their relationship had lasted almost a year before a competitor had threatened to expose them. Alexander had ended things that same night. Business came first. It was safer that way. Feelings were messy, complicated, dangerous for someone in his position. So he'd buried himself in work, in acquisition meetings and development projects, in 16-hour days that left no room for loneliness. He was reaching for the scotch bottle when he noticed something on the kitchen island, a blue envelope with his name written in careful handwriting. Strange. His assistant handled all his mail at the office. Alexander picked it up, noting the weight of it, the texture of inexpensive cardstock. Inside was a handmade birthday card. The front had been decorated with hand-drawn architectural sketches clearly created with care. Inside, beneath a quote from Walt Whitman about the freedom to be oneself, was a message. "Dear Mr. Mitchell, happy birthday. I hope this day brings you moments of joy and reminds you that you matter beyond your accomplishments. You deserve to be celebrated just for being you. With warm wishes, Noah." Alexander stared at the words, reading them twice, then 3 times. Noah Harris, the young man he'd hired through an agency to tutor his nephew Tyler during the boy's extended stay while Alexander's sister recovered from surgery. He barely knew Noah beyond his credentials. 26 years old, psychology student, excellent references. Yet somehow, this stranger had seen through the walls Alexander had spent decades building. In that moment, something cracked open in his chest, the first real feeling he'd allowed himself in years. If this story speaks to your heart about the walls we build and the courage it takes to break them down, follow Heart Stories for more journeys of truth, identity, and the quiet bravery of being yourself in a world that often asks us to be someone else. Alexander turned the card over in his hands, running his fingers along the careful sketches. Noah had drawn the New York skyline, but with subtle differences, rainbow flags flying from certain buildings, including Mitchell Tower. Had Noah noticed how Alexander always changed the channel when marriage equality news came on while Tyler was watching cartoons? How he'd flinched when his nephew had innocently asked why he didn't have a wife or husband like his mother did? Alexander had thought his masks were perfect, impenetrable. Yet this young man with earnest eyes and a quiet voice had somehow seen right through them. Noah Harris wasn't just any tutor. Before going to medical school, he'd worked at a Boston nonprofit supporting LGBT youth rejected by their families. Alexander had skimmed that part of his resume, focused only on his academic credentials and experience with children. Now he wondered what else he'd missed about the young man who moved through his home with quiet purpose. Filling the penthouse with sounds Alexander had forgotten, homes could make the murmur of patient explanations, the warm laughter of shared jokes, the occasional soft melody when Noah hummed while helping Tyler with his homework. The Whitman quote burned in his mind, "Every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." Such a deliberate choice, Whitman, America's great poet who never hid his love for men. Speaking across centuries about the freedom of authentic existence, Alexander had studied literature before business school, before he'd decided that following his passion was a luxury he couldn't afford. He'd loved Whitman once. Had Noah somehow known this too? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of laughter from the living room. Noah and Tyler were building something elaborate from blocks, their heads bent together in concentration. Noah wore simple jeans and a blue button-down that matched his eyes, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with a small tattoo, the outline of Massachusetts. Alexander realized, a reminder of home. The tallest tower in New York, Tyler was saying proudly, adding another block to their creation. Even taller than Uncle Alex's building. Architecture is about more than just height, Noah replied, his voice carrying a gentle warmth that made Alexander pause in the doorway. The most beautiful buildings are the ones that make people feel something when they step inside. Safe. Welcome. Like they belong. Alexander felt a tightness in his throat. When was the last time he'd felt he truly belonged anywhere? His apartment, his office, even his childhood home. They'd all been stages where he performed various versions of himself, never the whole truth. He'd built an empire of glass and steel, yet he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt safe enough to simply exist without calculation. Noah looked up and saw him standing there, the birthday card still in his hand. Their eyes met, and Alexander felt a strange recognition pass between them, the quiet understanding that comes when someone sees parts of you that you've worked so hard to hide. It wasn't just that Noah had noticed Alexander was gay. He had seen his loneliness, his carefully constructed walls, and the human being buried beneath years of pretending. That night, after Noah had gone home and Tyler was asleep, Alexander sat on his balcony overlooking the city. Lights sparkled below like earthbound stars. Millions of lives unfolding in windows and streets. How many others were living behind the walls of their own making? How many had forgotten what it felt like to be seen, truly seen, without judgment or expectation? The cards sat on the table beside him, a small blue square in a world of sharp angles and hard surfaces, a reminder that sometimes salvation arrives in unexpected packages, from people we barely know, but who somehow know us better than we know ourselves. The following evening, Alexander came home early for the first time in years. He found Noah and Tyler in the kitchen, flour dusting their hands as they shaped cookies. The scene looked like something from a life Alexander had never allowed himself to imagine. Warm, domestic, real. Tyler spotted him first, eyes widening with surprise. "Uncle Alex, you're home before bedtime. We're making snickerdoodles." His nephew's delight at such a simple thing made Alexander's chest ache. How many moments like this had he missed, Mr. Mitchell? Noah said, his professional demeanor sliding back into place. "We weren't expecting you until later. There's dinner in the oven if you'd like some." Alexander held up the birthday card. "I found this yesterday. I wanted to thank you personally." Color touched Noah's cheeks, a faint pink beneath his tan. "I hope it wasn't inappropriate. I know employers and employees should maintain boundaries, but birthdays deserve acknowledgement." "How did you know?" Alexander asked, the question encompassing far more than just the date of his birth. Noah wiped his hands on a dish towel, his gaze steady. "Tyler, why don't you go wash up? The dough needs to chill anyway." When the boy had left, Noah leaned against the counter. "Which part are you asking about, Mr. Mitchell? How I knew it was your birthday, or how I knew the rest?" "Both," Alexander said quietly. "All of it. Your birthday was in your sister's instructions for Tyler's care. As for the rest..." Noah paused, choosing his words carefully. "I notice things. The way you tense up when certain news stories come on. How you redirect conversations that get too personal. The books in your study, you have a first edition of Leaves of Grass hidden behind financial reports." Alexander felt exposed, as if Noah had peeled back his skin to reveal the person he'd buried long ago. "And what made you think you could mention it? Do you know what would happen if clients found out, if competitors got wind of it?" "I know exactly what happens," Noah said, his voice suddenly harder. "I was 19 when my parents found out. They gave me a choice conversion therapy. Or get out. I got out." He rolled up his sleeve further, revealing the full tattoo Massachusetts with a small star marking Boston. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, lived on friends' couches, started the youth center because I knew what it was like to have nowhere to go. The silence that followed held the weight of shared understanding. 2 men from different worlds, connected by the same pain. I had a full scholarship to Harvard, Alexander finally said. When my father cut me off, I nearly dropped out. My roommate felt so guilty about outing me that he let me sleep on his floor for a semester. I worked in the library, ate ramen for every meal, graduated top of my class to prove I didn't need them. He'd never told anyone this, not even James. And now, Noah asked gently, now I have everything I was supposed to want and nothing I actually need. Alexander admitted, the truth finally spoken aloud. I built all this to show them they couldn't break me. Instead, I broke myself into pieces they would approve of. Uncle Alex isn't happy. Tyler's voice came from the doorway, startling them both. The child stood there in his dinosaur pajamas, wisdom beyond his years in his solemn expression. That's what Noah told me yesterday. He said you're a good man who forgot how to be happy because you're too busy being who everyone else wants. Noah's face flushed deeply. Tyler, that was a private conversation. But Alexander was looking at the young man with new eyes. Noah Harris, with his psychology degree and quiet observations, had done what no one in Alexander's high-powered circle had bothered to do. He'd seen the human being behind the title, the pain behind the success. And in that moment of being truly seen, Alexander felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the possibility of being known, and perhaps even accepted for exactly who he was. Noah, Alexander said softly, would you teach me? Teach you what, Mr. Mitchell? Alex, he corrected. Teach me how to remember what matters, how to be the man you somehow already see. Over the next few weeks, Noah became more than Tyler's tutor. He became Alexander's guide back to a life worth living. They started small cooking dinner together while Tyler did homework, walks in Central Park on weekends, visits to museums Alexander had built but never enjoyed. Noah insisted on no phones during these outings, no urgent calls from the office, just presence, attention, the practice of being fully in each moment. You've created beautiful spaces for others, Noah said as they stood in the atrium of the Mitchell Contemporary Art Museum, Alexander's most acclaimed project. But you never let yourself exist in them. You're always moving on to the next thing, the next achievement. Alexander watched a family laughing together near a sculpture, the parents holding hands, the children pointing excitedly. I was raised to believe that standing still meant falling behind. There's a difference between pausing and stopping, Noah replied. One is breath, the other is suffocation. The lessons continued. Noah taught Alexander to cook simple meals, finding satisfaction in the process rather than just the result. He showed him how to play with Tyler without checking his watch, how to build pillow forts and tell silly stories, how to be fully present in the magic of a child's imagination. He took him to farmers markets on weekends, introducing him to the simple pleasure of selecting fresh produce and talking with the people who grew it. More challenging were the lessons in authenticity. Noah convinced Alexander to attend a discreet support group for LGBT professionals. The first time, Alexander sat in his car for 30 minutes before finding the courage to enter the community center where they met. Inside, he found CEOs, lawyers, doctors, successful people who shared his fear of being fully themselves in their careers. I've spent 20 years hiding, Alexander confessed during his second meeting. I don't know if I can stop now. A silver-haired woman, the CEO of a major hospital system, smiled sadly. I said the same thing at 50. Now I'm 65, with a wife I adore and colleagues who respect me more for my honesty than they ever did for my facade. The years I spent hiding are the only ones I truly regret. The most difficult test came unexpectedly. Alexander took Noah to a charity gala not as his date, but because Tyler was visiting his mother, and Noah had expressed interest in the arts organization being supported. They arrived separately, maintained professional distance. But Harrison Wells, one of Alexander's most conservative clients, spotted them talking. The following Monday, Harrison requested an urgent meeting. "I saw you with that young man at the gala," he said without preamble. "My daughter follows him on social media. She says he runs some sort of gay youth thing in Boston." Alexander felt ice spread through his veins. This was it, the moment he'd feared for decades. The choice between his carefully constructed life and the truth. He thought of Noah's quiet strength, of the teenagers at the youth center who had nothing but still chose authenticity, of the weight he'd carried for too many years. "Yes," Alexander said, his voice steady. "Noah Harris worked with LGBT youth before becoming my nephew's tutor. He's also one of the most insightful people I've ever met." "So you're—" Harrison trailed off, his expression unreadable. "Gay? Yes, I always have been." The words hung in the air between them, the first time Alexander had spoken them in a professional setting. "If that's a problem for you, Harrison, I understand, but I won't apologize for who I am. Not anymore." Harrison was silent for a long moment. Then, to Alexander's surprise, he smiled slightly. "My son came out last year. College freshman. I handled it badly. Haven't spoken to him since Christmas." He looked away, then back at Alexander. "Maybe we could grab a drink sometime. Talk about, I don't know, how to fix things." The conversation left Alexander shaking, but lighter. That evening, he called his sister Caroline, the only family member who had maintained contact after their parents' rejection. "I'm thinking of making some changes," he told her. "Big ones." "About time," she replied warmly. "The suit never really fit you anyway. Alex, not the business one, and definitely not the other kind." As spring turned to summer, Alexander found himself doing things he'd never imagined. Attending a small pride event with Noah, meeting Noah's parents, warm, open-hearted people who welcomed him into their modest Boston home with genuine interest. Most surprising was how his business thrived as he became more authentic. Clients responded to his renewed passion, his genuine presence in meetings. The company's charitable foundation expanded its focus to include LGBT youth housing initiatives, which brought positive press and new partnerships. "You're different," Noah observed one evening as they walked along the High Line, the city glowing below them. Tyler had returned to his mother weeks ago, but Noah had continued their lessons, their friendship evolving into something neither had anticipated. "I'm remembering," Alexander replied. "Or maybe becoming. I'm not sure there's a difference." He paused, looking at the young man who had irrevocably changed his life. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Noah's smile held something new, a warmth beyond friendship, a possibility neither had yet named. The person was always there. "Alex, you just needed someone to hand you a mirror that didn't distort the reflection." That night, standing beneath the stars, Alexander Mitchell felt something he had abandoned hope of ever experiencing, the sensation of living without fear, of existing without apology. The world hadn't ended when he began to show his true self. Instead, it had expanded, offering colors and textures he'd never allowed himself to see. Perhaps the greatest lesson Noah had taught him wasn't how to be happy, but how to be brave enough to pursue happiness on his own authentic terms. 2 years passed like a breath. Alexander Mitchell stood on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in shades of gold and amber. The space had transformed, just as he had. Gone were the stark grays and whites, replaced with warm woods, colorful art, and comfortable furniture that invited conversation rather than impressed visitors. Photographs lined the walls, Alexander and Noah hiking in the Adirondacks, Noah's graduation from medical school, the opening of Noah's psychology practice for LGBT youth. Most treasured was the photo from their wedding in Massachusetts, the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. They'd chosen a historic courthouse, surrounded by friends who had become family. Carolyn had stood beside Alexander, their parents' absence a dull ache rather than a sharp pain. Noah's parents had welcomed Alexander with open arms, his mother whispering, Thank you for bringing our son closer to home." As she embraced him, inside, Emma's laughter echoed through the once silent penthouse. The 15-year-old transgender girl had come into their lives unexpectedly through Noah's clinic, rejected by conservative parents. Brilliant but wounded. What began as emergency foster placement became permanent adoption. Their family forming in ways none of them had anticipated, but all of them needed. Alexander's phone buzzed with a text from Harrison Wells, a photo of him and his son at a college football game, both smiling. Progress, slow but steady. The Mitchell Foundation's LGBT youth housing initiative had expanded to 5 cities, providing safe homes for hundreds of teens like Emma. Alexander had testified before Congress about the economic impacts of LGBT discrimination, using his business credentials to advocate for equality in ways only someone with his background could. Noah's psychology practice thrived, helping young people navigate the same pain he and Alexander had experienced. They complemented each other perfectly, Alexander with his strategic mind and resources, Noah with his empathy and direct understanding of trauma. Together, they were building something neither could have created alone. "Dad, Papa wants to know if you're hiding out here again," Emma called through the open door, her recently dyed purple hair catching the last rays of sunlight. She'd started calling them Dad and Papa just months after moving in, the words falling naturally from her lips one morning over breakfast. Neither man had been able to speak for several minutes afterward, overcome with emotion. "Tell him I'm coming," Alexander replied, smiling at the easy domesticity that now filled his life. Inside, Noah was setting the table for dinner, sleeves rolled up as always. The Massachusetts tattoo now joined by a small line drawing of the New York skyline, a representation of how his heart had expanded to include this city, this life, this family they'd built together. "Your sister called," Noah said as Alexander entered. "She wants us all to come to Boston next weekend. Tyler misses Emma, and apparently Caroline has a surprise announcement." Alexander wrapped his arms around Noah from behind, resting his chin on his shoulder. "Remember when I couldn't even say the word boyfriend without looking over my shoulder? Now I'm planning family weekends with my husband and daughter." Noah turned in his arms, eyes serious. "You were always capable of this life. Alex, the courage was inside you. You just needed someone to help you find it again." "I needed you," Alexander corrected softly. "Your kindness, your persistence, your refusal to let me hide from myself." Later that evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Alexander found a blue envelope on his pillow. Inside was a handmade card, just like the one that had changed his life years ago. This one featured an intricate drawing of their family, Alexander, Noah, and Emma standing together on the High Line. Inside was another quote from Walt Whitman. "We were together. I forget the rest." Below it, in Noah's careful handwriting, "Happy anniversary of the day you decided to live, not just exist. I've loved every minute of watching you become the man you were always meant to be." Alexander Mitchell, once defined by wealth and achievements, now measured his success differently by the young lives changed through their foundation, by the genuine relationships he'd built, by his daughter's growing confidence, by the love he and Noah had cultivated through intentional presence and radical honesty. The empire still stood, but it no longer stood alone when it had become a tool for change rather than a fortress of isolation. Each morning, Alexander woke beside Noah, watched the sun illuminate their home, and marveled at the journey a single birthday card had set in motion. The truest architecture, he had learned, wasn't in building towers that reached the sky, but in creating spaces where people could be fully, authentically themselves, including, at long last, himself. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone saw the real you behind all your carefully constructed walls? A moment that changed everything that followed. Share your story in the comments and subscribe to Heart Stories for more journeys of courage, transformation, and the beautiful complexity of human connection. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply allow ourselves to be seen.